Hello and welcome back to Asteri, Sofia, Kairos, and we're with you for the week of the 18th to the 25th of December. And there's three of us today. Unfortunately, the pressures of the Christmas month of December have got to some of our other ladies. So with us today, we have Mandi Rae of Static Astrology and Christa of Practical Astros. And I'm Sonia from Celestia Astrology. So let's have a look at what we've got. So this week, the 18th to the 25th, we're going to be looking at Venus trining Jupiter. And that's really lovely because we've got both the benefics in aspect. So that's obviously a really nice time. We like to see those two talking to each other.
And we need it.
Yes, yeah, we certainly do. And they're both in air signs. So that'll be interesting. Venus newly in Aquarius, or she's moving through there at 14 degrees. So she's halfway through their journey. And Jupiter's retrograde in Gemini. And then Christa will be taking us through the sun entering Capricorn. And that's a turning point of the year, isn't it? When we reach the winter solstice. And then Mandi will be looking at Jupiter retrograde squaring the Saturn in Pisces. And that is also a big deal because these two have one of the longest cycles that we're looking at.
And it just happens to be Christmas Eve. It's like, wah, wah.
Yeah, the timing of that is big. But at least we have Jupiter in the superior position, which is something. Because it can be quite heavy, that one. And it's not their first meeting, so that helps as well. Takes some of the heaviness off. So if we go and look at the first, got Venus trining Jupiter. And as we said, Jupiter is retrograde and in exile. And the one saving grace, let me find Jupiter, is that Jupiter is still in a whole sign opposition with Mercury. Mercury is ruling Gemini and Jupiter is ruling Sagittarius where Mercury is, which means that the two are in a mutual reception. So they're offering support to each other. So that's helping Jupiter, who's retrograde in exile, which means it's struggling in an unfamiliar place. And then it's got this trine to our lovely Venus, who likes to bring harmony and joy and peace whenever she goes, fun, laughter. She's the party queen. I like to think of her as happiness and enjoyment, positivity to relationships, beauty and love and sex and all those kind of things. And Jupiter likes to expand them. And maybe in Gemini, he's looking at the data. So trying to think of what those significations might be. Maybe there's more information coming in. Maybe you get a tarot reading on your latest love when it's in air signs and it's about looking at that information. And in Aquarius, it can be about the collective as well. So maybe there's more information coming through about the collective relationships. So you can't help thinking about what's going on in the world right now. Maybe there's some peace information coming through. That would be nice. If we see a peace treaty, that might be a bit too much to hope for.
No, not at all.
Let's put it out into the world. We'll speak it and put it out into the world there.
Yeah.
And we see Venus opposite the moon there in a whole sign opposition to the moon in Leo. Leo can be about the leaders. So again, that helps me think about maybe a leader. The moon is the significations of intuition and our body and how we feel and intuit things. So maybe there's something coming through to the leaders in the world there that helps them. It creates a tension there between what the moon wants, its nurturing needs, and what Venus wants in terms of bringing people together and creating that harmony. So there's
I like that
asking to be resolved.
Yeah, I love that. And I just noticed looking at it that the luminaries are trying each other at the same time that the benefics are trying each other. So it really does feel like, I think, peace treaty on many macro and micro levels. When you have just like seeing eye to eye and a supportive nature, the eyes in astrology are seen through the luminaries, the left eye and the right eye, the moon, and then having kind of the benefics like to work together. I think that's a great delineation and doesn't seem so far-fetched now that, we're looking at it.
Right. Now that we're closer. And the moon will sextile Jupiter as it comes in to that trine. So it does feel nice on the micro level, maybe, a Christmas party or something with the moon in Leo. It does feel lighter.
Yeah, it's really nice. And this is their closing trine of their cycle. So sometimes that can be about a release. So obviously making peace in relationships is about the closing out of an issue that maybe started with conjunction and has grown bigger into an issue and then is now closing and finishing out and being released. So their conjunction was on the 23rd of May 2024 at 29 degrees of Taurus, so right at the anaretic 10th degree of Taurus. And their next conjunction will be next year, on the 12th of August 2025. And that will be at 14 degrees of Cancer and conjunct the fixed star Sirius. And Sirius is like the star of the dog, isn't it? That was said to control the tides and the floods in Egypt. Was the rising star.
Well, it does command attention. It's so twinkly. If you've ever looked at it in the sky, it actually twinkles.
Yeah. Well, I'm just looking to see, like, there's so many like pilgrimage religious festivals that happen around the middle of August. There's one particular one that happens on one of the islands of Greece, and it has to do with either a revelation of Mary or there's some sort of like Christian mystic association with that middle. And so whenever like those dates, like the 12th to the 15th of August come up, I'm always like, ooh, that's like a good pilgrimage day, just for personal revelation. So whenever there's a loud transit that happens and happening there in Cancer, as the Sirius star rises, it's the flooding of the Nile, it's the beginning of summer. It's just like those Cancerian fluids like release and open up. It's like that in itself feels ominous, like full of omen. So
it does. And to have this trine be in air before we have that watery conjunction, it feels like it's going to bring us back into our soul, our needs. But this is, what are you thinking? What are you planning? What is the future? Get that together. It feels really good to have the air before the water, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something about just the quality of air, like with water is held in whatever container you put it in. Earth is like clearly defined with edges, 3-dimensional edges. Fire is just like that consumption and that joie de vivre. But air just fills in the spaces that are left. So it can like really breathe in life to places that maybe are the dusty corners or the top of your fridge that's dirty or whatever. It's like it really breathes in life of like every available space. And so in some ways, air aspects can be difficult to pinpoint exactly where they're going to be. You can look at the Gemini Aquarius houses in your chart to kind of maybe speak to it, but just having that supportive breath of fresh air come in and just like bring in life, the breath of life into those areas of the areas of life or the houses in your chart. Yeah, it'll be nice to kind of like blow the dust off before we cleanse it with those Cancerian waters later on next year.
And Mercury will be direct. Yay. This is not long after Mercury's direct. So, woo!
Yeah. That really gives a boost, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really sweet that Mercury goes direct and then Venus trines Jupiter in Mercury's sign.
Yep. And can I just say, Venus is moving really fast, like currently. Like it was just like, it seemed like yesterday that Pluto and Venus conjoined, and already we're looking at her at that middle degree of like, she just seems super fast in Aquarius.
She does, doesn't she? I mean, I made that mistake of saying she was newly in Aquarius, and then you look, no, she is 14 degrees. It's crazy, isn't it, when you notice those speeds? And that the next aspect coming up will be a square. So there will be some tension coming between the two of them, and that will be at 11 Pisces, squaring Jupiter and Gemini. So when she gets to Pisces, she'll form that square. And it's very close to Saturn. So that won't be as easy as the one that we're experiencing now. So enjoy this one, make the most of it, because we know that there's going to be that water to air square, like Christa was saying about the qualities of each of those elements. So that's an introduction maybe of the water quality, but with the heaviness of Saturn, the maturity that Saturn brings, but also sometimes some alienation or some outsider qualities. But we're getting that anyway with the Aquarius air element.
Yeah, at least when she's in Pisces, she'll be exalted and she'll be see the ruler. She can't see her ruler right now because of the lack of effect. So I can't think of the word aversion, which seems like aversion coded anyway. Like, what's it called?
Yeah. When they're next to each other in the houses, we call it a lack of sight. It goes back to Greek optic theory, but it's like when you're driving and you have a blind spot and you can't see what's like right next to you.
Yeah. A good couple of days to do things. There haven't been a whole lot of great aspects that we have to work with. But once the moon passes Mars, the couple of days before, I think moon trine Mercury, moon opposite Venus, sextile Jupiter, those are going to be some good times to do certain things, especially things to do with creativity, putting yourself out there, moving forward on a creative project, things like that.
Venus will love that. Hey, should we move on?
Yeah, 1 day later.
1 day later.
So we go into the sun leaves Sagittarius and enters into Capricorn. So all the cardinal signs, the tropical signs, are kind of that hinge of the wheel of the year where, you know, when the sun is 0 degrees Aries, that's the beginning of the spring equinox. And then when it's at 0 degrees Cancer, it's summer solstice. And then 0 degrees Libra, fall equinox. And then 0 degrees Capricorn, where we are here today, it's the winter solstice. And so this really does kind of, you know, I think of those revolving doors, you know, it just, you walk into, you know, one chapter and you kind of have to really hinge around to be able to exit, to go into a completely different building. And this is the cardinal sign. They really kind of, the momentum pushes us forward. And so seeing the sun come here, you know, in this first degree of Capricorn really does kind of change the vibe at the party. I think about, you know, the lead up to, you know, the holiday season. We're in Sun and Sagittarius. Everybody's like pumped up and like real like giving and jovial and like thinking about travel and like just all these Sagittarius things, you know, parties and getting together and drinking and eating and all this stuff. And then we get into the a couple of days before Christmas, and then we enter into Capricorn, and everybody's like, why did I commit to so much? I'm tired. I want like the house to be clean again. I want all these presents to be put up. It's like just before Christmas, you're still in that mood because you're like, I've already gotten all the Christmas decorations out, but I'm already ready to kind of put them up. I like just the influx of so much stuff inside during the Sagittarius season. And then we get to like cleanse and purge and like remove, which feels Capricornian. You know, the Capricornian aesthetic is more utilitarian and less superfluous. It's more like a uniform instead of a costume. You know, that Janessa, who wasn't able to join us in the conversation today, she talks about Sagittarius. The Sagittarius to Capricorn transition is like Sagittarius is the fuck around and the Capricorn is to find out. And so when we're in Capricorn, it's like we all kind of find out of all the things that we fucked around in Sagittarius, but it really does begin the ascent of the light, even though it is the darkest day of the year on winter solstice. The hope brings eternal. It's like, but now you may not tell, but it's going to get brighter and brighter and brighter. And you appreciate that when the sun goes down at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because you're like, wow, in like a month, it's going to be 5 o'clock. And then you can't even imagine in July when the sun goes down at like 9:30. It's like hard to even imagine, but you know, at that point, the sun is going to start to rise. So this right here kind of really does, it gets the sun out of the whole sign square to Saturn, which I like. The sun is now in Saturn's temple. It can see by sextile its ruler. I just think that relationship does kind of ease some tension. It also cannot engage with Pluto like it had been doing since Pluto had been in Capricorn for so long. Now it's kind of hidden. So it just, again, creates a little less of a tension between the sun and Pluto there, not being co-present while Pluto is in Capricorn. So it's really just a vibe shift. It's like the Marie Kondo, get rid of everything that doesn't bring you joy sort of a thing. And we'll have that, you know, for the next, 30 days. So yeah, those are my initial thoughts. I do also like is in a trine, like welcoming it, like Virgo's like, I agree. Let's get rid of all this stuff in the house.
It does agree. That's what I was thinking while you were saying that, is the moon in Virgo is perfect for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was also thinking when you were saying it, that it's like Sagittarius is like your Christmas shopping, when you start spending more than you thought and you see little extras that you start adding on. Oh, this will be nice, and get some extra food, much more than you actually need. And then you get into Capricorn, the sun and the bills start coming in, and the reality hits that you can't fit all the food in your fridge. It's like that reality really hitting of, how are you going to do this? Yeah.
I always think of Yule. Yule starts the 21st, and Yule being associated with Odin, and Odin's such a Saturnian god, in my opinion. But there is this, we are in the dark together kind of feel. So we have to be structured. We have to have our food. We have to make sure that we're also partying and not being depressed. It's like this very weird mixture of things with Capricorn, with the solstice, especially in the northern hemisphere. I think southern hemisphere, probably experiences it a little differently. And, I don't want to be in the theory, but I do love, I get this really magical feeling with the solstice that maybe it just comes from the fact that it is Christmas season, but the Yule log, the customs, the tradition, that's really where I'm going with this. And that's such a Capricorn feeling. What is our tradition? What is our custom? And how do we adhere to it and honor things and purge and clean for family coming over? And I mean, it's just such a kind of a nice time, I think.
The other thing with it, for the Astrologers Co-op, I wrote about Capricorn 1, the Decan. And one of the things that I wrote about was the idea of the wild hunt and talking about Odin. And there's this, because we don't have 360 days in a year, right? There's these intercalary days because we have, 12 months. Months are named after the moon, and we have one solar year. But really, because of our days, we have like an extra couple of days, roughly about 10 or 12, that they're outside of regular time. They're outside of like the structured time. And so the 10 days beginning at solstice until the end of the year, we have this kind of wild time. And the idea of the wild hunt was like, for those 10 days, like magical spirits would be running through the woods. And like, if you were unlucky enough or lucky enough, depending on what the mood of those spirits and gods were, you would be like caught to join them. And it is a totally dark, magical time to do things outside of a regular calendar. And so there's Hawk Astrology does the omen walk, and they begin it on solstice day. And then you look for omens every single day until the end of the year, until you get an omen for every month of the coming year beginning on that solstice day. So it is a truly weird, magical time, in addition to, and maybe it's related to like not wanting to have the physical obligations or relationship obligations, because your head is kind of in a more magical space where you want it to be, and you don't want to be distracted by having to go to an office party or having to, do all the go to Walmart to buy more gifts. Like that's the last thing that you want to do. And you want to just like take mushrooms and like run with the rabbits in the woods. Like that's like, which one would you rather do, during this time?
Right. Yeah.
So it is such a magical space of time kind of outside of our regular schedule.
Yeah. Veneration of the ancestors kind of a deal as well. And it's so funny to me. It just made me realize that Black Friday, which is the big shopping day, right after Thanksgiving, happens way before the solstice. I mean, because you wouldn't want to be doing that during the solstice, So a lot of people get all of that done really early in Sagittarius season. I'm not going to do any more shopping. I'm good.
Yeah.
Ancestors, rabbit, mushrooms. I'm good.
Something else I see here is that the sun is at the bending of the nodes, and we have the nodes traveling back towards Virgo and Aries.
The bends.
Time
feels like getting the bends. We're diving too deep a little bit.
Yeah.
I love those moments though, because they are the exact middle point. It feels like we've reached the middle point and we have just a half of that more to go before we have the next eclipses. And that this is a stepping stone moment, in between eclipse themes.
Yeah, it's a real punctuation as they're preparing to leave, isn't it? To catch them at that point of turning. The solstice point as well.
Exciting times.
It is. Okay, should we move on?
Yep. Let's go to a square.
Yeah.
Let's have a square to the next.
Here we go. We've got Jupiter square Saturn. Jupiter's retrograde. It's kind of like they're rushing head on at each other, is what it feels like, because Jupiter is still moving in its apparent motion backwards, and Saturn is now moving forwards in direct motion. This is the middle square. So we have 3 total squares with Jupiter and Saturn. The strange thing about this specific pairing of 3 squares is that 2 of them are in mutable signs. The last one is in cardinal signs. So this one here, I always look at the middle square, if there's 3, if there's retrogrades involved, as the one that really makes the difference. The first one's the one that introduces the theme to you, which was August 19th, I believe, was the first
middle
square. Yeah. And then we have this square asking you the question about what you want to do about it. So August introduced the theme, middle square, okay, how are we going to make this work? And then we have the last square sometime in June when Jupiter moves into Cancer and Saturn in Aries. So completely different themes, but that's the one that kind of buttons it up, is the third one. So this one is particularly important to me. And with respect to the mutable signs, and I think we've seen a lot of this already because they're floating in a sign-based square anyway, they're not exactly agreeing no matter what, no matter how close an orb they are to square. So we've been dealing with these themes, especially since August, of information versus delusion versus confusion. And I think there has been a lot of that. I'm seeing the drones talk on the internet right now, and I can't help but think this is totally related to this almost, I don't know what's real right now, and I have to dig and we're forced to spend our time digging into to see if something is real right now. And I think that really will characterize the square. Saturn moving direct in Pisces is Saturn wants to kind of give that some structure, give the delusion some structure. Unfortunately, I think what we get from that is some echoes of the 90s and the domestic terrorism and the cults and the delusions of that. But we didn't have Jupiter and Gemini. So Jupiter and Gemini is helpful in that way because it points us to the fact that we just need to do the research. We just have to continually be on our toes. And I think that's, as much as we want to escape, as much as we want to just go into our creativity, veneration of the ancestors and running in the woods, there is this need to dig for truth and to make sure that we know what's going on. I think that's going to characterize that a whole lot.
Yeah, and when they make that final square, Jupiter will be exalted and Saturn will be fallen. So the condition of those planets is going to be very different than this one. They're both kind of like not great in either. I think probably Jupiter, because it's, in a foreign land in retrograde, probably has a little bit worse than Saturn. And Saturn is at least now, receiving support from the sun. This is the diurnal sect. Like this is the team. And it feels like Saturn may be at this moment, hopefully the best things that we can glean from Saturn of like recognizing limitations and, retrograde Jupiter and Gemini, I totally see of like going down rabbit holes of trying to do research, but then still not even being like, well, how do I know what their source is? Like it's really questioning and creating the networks, like the synapses, like creating those new bridges of ways of thinking to help in the future of like, it doesn't make sense to me this way. So let me kind of go around and like just be stuck in this river eddy of thought of like, maybe how else could it have happened? It can be just mentally exhausting. And then that Saturn, I think, might help but be like, maybe limit your time of how much time, mental bandwidth you spend on this subject. Like, is it drones? Is it aliens? Does it matter to you today?
That's great point. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Mercury in Sagittarius, having finished its retrograde, now coming back to oppose Jupiter, the Mercury-Jupiter mutual reception is wonderful on one hand, but I think on the other hand, there is that tendency to overthink. And I mean, they're just it's a feedback loop of that. So in a way, Saturn in Pisces is to limit us from that. Unfortunately, I think that this is a moment where, and I think we've talked about it in videos we've done, Christa, where we just have to be okay with not knowing, with not maybe being able to see way, way far ahead. We still don't know what's going to happen when, in America at least, we had this big election. We don't know what it's going to be like yet, So this time period feels very much like, okay, focus on what's spiritually important to you. It's a very Saturn Pisces thing, and what you need, how you need to be in alignment with what you believe to be true. It's very philosophical. That's just the vibe it's giving me. I do like that the moon's in Libra. It feels very much like, okay, well, let's balance it out a little bit. And, maybe I'll talk to my friend and see what they think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that Mercury there is moving into a T-square.
It is.
Like it's almost degree based, isn't it, with Saturn and Jupiter?
Yeah, it's like Mercury's like, I told you.
Coming to a head, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I like the Mars and the Sun, I don't know that they can't see each other, but there is something there. And then the lichen girding with the Moon and Neptune also, it's like they can't see each other, but there's something there. It just feels like, having a structure of like how to organize all these things. Like it's that Always Sunny in Philadelphia Charlie meme where he's got his hands on the board with all the red string. Like, have you ever actually done that? Because it's really satisfying to do. Like putting all your evidence and then just making the connections and being like, maybe that's the structure. And so there's these things that like pop out, even just this chart of the moment. I'm like, they can't technically see each other, but there's some sort of affiliation there. Mars exalts over there in Capricorn and they're at the same degree, but they can't see. Like, what does it mean? Like kind of what this is.
When you were saying that, I was just realizing that there's nothing in Cancer. There's something in every other sign.
Cancer's like, I'm out.
Yep.
Bye. As you said that, the slide's gone.
I mean, that's such a strange, happening, I think. I guess there's the part of fortune in Scorpio, but, the water signs being something that's like, what do we think? What do we believe here? I don't know. Let's just, let's go get it under the covers.
Yeah, that's our empty countertop, isn't it?
Yeah.
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 The other thing I was thinking was, I think it was Austin Coppock was saying it on the Astrology podcast, was at the moment with these opening squares between Jupiter and Saturn, is that we've got Jupiter in the superior position. So enjoy these 3 opening squares as much as you can enjoy something that's this heavy, because once we get to the opposition and the closing squares, we're going to have Saturn in the superior position. So they're going to be a lot more intense. Going back to what you were saying, Mandi, about it being philosophical, that's the energy that Jupiter's bringing, the wisdom and the philosophy, and like that mage energy that Jupiter brings is helpful and benefic. Whereas Saturn's going to close things off and shut things down and bring those lessons in.
And Saturn being in Jupiter's sign, I mean, there's just a few things with this square that I think are important leading up to the cardinal square. As far as getting to the bottom of the information before we have to act on it.
Yeah, that cardinal square is going to be interesting next year.
Yeah. And that exact date, I have that exact date. That is June 15th is when the last square is, just to put that out there.
And it's at 01 degrees of Aries Cancer.
Yeah. Big deal.
It is.
Yeah. That's when I'm giving my lecture.
Oh.
Act on it. On it.
Yeah, Christa is going to be doing a speaker series for Nightlight Astrology School, where we've all learned. So yeah, do register for that when you see it come up. I'm sure we'll be promoting it on here.
Yeah, I just realized that was the day they gave me. Fine. Jupiter will be right on my own Mars, so I'll be like full armed, so it'll be fine.
Yeah, just channel that mage and philosophical wisdom and everything. Yeah. I mean, I've literally...
No, it'll be on my Venus. Sorry. It's Jupiter will be on Venus, not on my Mars.
Yeah. I took some of the archetypes out of the archetypal book that we've got, the Ren Butler book, and it's literally our namesake, Sofia of Greece. So it works for us. The gods and goddesses of justice and wisdom coming through and being grounded by Saturn. Yeah, so Mart in Egypt, Sophia in Greece, and Minerva for Rome. So those are the kind of archetypes that are being channeled here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and this decan of Saturn is a double Jupiterian decan. It's like Jupiter rules Pisces and Jupiter rules that decan. So it's, I like it just to have a little bit extra support for whatever planet goes in there. And Saturn needs that help. So
we've got Jupiter.
Don't tell him we said that. He definitely needs that help.
Yeah,
definitely.
Okay. So that concludes this week, and we'll be back with you next week looking at the 25th of December to the 1st of January. And we have been Christa from Practical Astros, Mandi Rae from Astrological Astrology, and Sonia from Celestia Astrology. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this, please remember to like, subscribe, and we welcome your comments and your questions. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.